Hello and welcome to this Fingal Chamber business briefing with Fingal County Council. My name is David Brannigan. I work with the Fingal Chamber of Commerce. You're very welcome along. I'm joined today by some of our leadership in Fingal County Council. They're going to give a bit of an overview as to how Fingal is performing, what their plans are for the future in a range of different areas around the economy, enterprise, tourism, and planning and infrastructure, and a wide variety of areas. First this morning, before we get into that, I'd just like to introduce the 2025 Chamber President to say a few words, and that's Pat O'Connor. Pat.
Thanks, David. Welcome everybody to this very important business briefing this morning. I think it's very important that we take stock of the business environment that we exist in. I think business is the cornerstone of what we do in the county here in Fingal. So I'm very pleased to hand over to Chief Executive Marie Farrelly and Director of Economic Enterprise and Cultural Development, John Quinlivan. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. And before we just get into the presentation, I'd just like to let everyone know that if you've joined us live this morning, that there is a facility to put your questions in, submit them into us here via Zoom. So if you'd like to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your toolbar, feel free to use that throughout this session. And any questions that aren't addressed and what I'm expecting to be a very extensive presentation, we'll seek to get to at the end and put them to Anne-Marie and to John. But for now, I'd like to hand over to Anne-Marie and John. Thanks very much.
Thanks, David. Good morning, everybody. Delighted to be joined here today by John Quinlivan, Head of Economic Development here in Fingal, and also pleased to have the opportunity to address you all. We've some really exciting plans underway in Fingal, so this gives me the opportunity to brief you on those. I'm happy to take questions at the end of the presentation as well, and we'll allow plenty of time for that. I suppose we're at the beginning of a new council term. All our councillors were elected last June, 40 councillors in total. A few new parties joined Fingal County Council, like Aontú, the Nationalist Party. And of course, our ruling group presently is the Labour, Fianna Fáil, and some independents. A strong council, very supportive to me and to the work we do in the council. In addition to that, I suppose the national elections brought some change to Fingal as well. We're down to 2 ministers. We had previously 5 under the last government, Jack Chambers and Darragh O'Brien, both in new briefs. Jack Chambers in charge of the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, and Darragh more local in terms of the issues we face in Fingal, the Department of Transport and Energy, etc. So delighted to have some local representation in government, and they're strong supporters of us, and we've met both of them already, so they understand Fingal, and I think that's a help to us as a local authority. With the new council comes the corporate plan. We've just completed a new corporate plan for the county. It's about delivery for all, of course. We try to aim high and make sure that we deliver our vision, connecting people through inclusive communities and vibrant and sustainable places. That's a little different to our previous one, but again, a reflection of where the county is at this stage. As a council, we want to deliver high quality, people-centred service, serving the people and the businesses in the county. And we're always open to hear what we do well and what we don't do so well. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have this briefing, to hear directly from businesses. I try to keep out and about myself, meeting the people of the county and businesses, and I know John does too. And again, that all feeds into how we do our work. We mentioned the level of our ambition, and that's reflected in our capital plan. Again, just adopted recently by council. It stretches from this year on to 2027. It's probably no surprise to anyone that a lot of our work relates to housing. Over £1 billion expenditure planned for housing. Delighted to say we have a lot of our big projects underway, and I'll give you more information on those as we move through the presentation. But economic development, again, has a substantial budget that reflects the work we do at our enterprise centres, also the work we do with skill strategies and other direct business-related activity, but also economic lands and the work we want to do to encourage businesses to locate and to bring jobs into the county. And we've significant economic lands as well that John will highlight as we move through the presentation again. From a strategic infrastructure point of view, it's about activating both residential and economic lands. So most of that budget there in planning and strategic infrastructure of 240 million is about that, delivering the large scale roads that are needed to activate greenfield sites where that's appropriate, servicing the likes of the airport with the roads that we control, albeit that national roads are largely what's involved with the airport. And again, community needs, integration featuring young people being a young county, making sure that we do plenty of work in that area to make sure, I suppose, that we protect the future of the county and make sure that the facilities are there when we deliver housing. Moving on then to how we fund all that. It's never easy to have enough funding in the county, but because a lot of our spend is housing related, that typically for social housing comes as direct grants from government. And again, we work very closely with government to make sure that we can deliver the targets they need in the county. Fingal is still an attractive place for new housing. There's no doubt about that. That was evident in our development plan, but also evident with the number of construction projects we have active in the county. We have all of the large scale developers working in the county right now, and a lot of land is owned by a couple of the bigger names that you'd all recognise, like Glenveagh and Kern Homes, those public quoted companies that are very active in delivering housing efficiently and quickly. We're in partnership with them, but we're also in partnership with what you'd understand to be large scale construction companies, the likes of GEM, whose role is to build, so they come in, activate a site and get out their main aim is to get off-site as quickly as possible, having delivered the project. And I'll bring you through some of that detail later. With a lot of housing comes development contributions in the last year funded by government. So development contributions come with development, and the purpose of them is to deliver the ancillary service. So new parks, new community centres, new libraries, whatever is needed to service the new communities that are located in the county. And that's associated with the large budget we have for the capital programme, because we understand we have to get on with delivering those projects as well. 72 million is under assessment. That means we need to source funds for those projects. Government grants for community centres would be an example of the type of funds we'd be talking about. Greenways funded by the Department of Transport. So again, a lot of work by the teams trying to make sure we bring in as much funding as we can, not from government and even from the EU, to try and get those capital programme delivered and get the projects on the ground. Moving on then to the types of projects we're doing, just wanted to give you a flavour of the projects we've finished. So the Snubber interchange, any businesses from Blanchardstown will realise the importance of that interchange to business in the Dublin Enterprise Zone, the 20,000 jobs that are located there. It was one of our biggest roads projects ever. You can see it's quite complicated, but I know from using it myself, it has really increased the efficiency of that junction, but also the bridge over the N3 into the Dublin Enterprise industrial lands, but also walking and cycling facilities as well, and obviously the town centre needing to be serviced and the traffic it brings, particularly at busy shopping periods such as Christmas. We finished one community centre there in Meekstown, a beautiful building, well worth having a look at if you get the opportunity to go to that area. It's going to service an established residential community. It was long overdue, so we're delighted to get it open. But again, it's of a high standard, and it's going to benefit that community for many years to come. And just one example of active travel routes, the Harry Reynolds Road, many more delivered, but that's now complete, and the Minister's going to launch it at the end of this month. We've a lot of projects underway, as I mentioned. Out the window here from County Hall and Swords, it's amazing to watch the Swords Cultural Centre come out of the ground. Duggan Brothers are the contractor there. So far, doing tremendous work since they started on site last year. We'd hope to open that by the end of next year into 2027. New library, theatre, cultural centre as well. So it's going to be a tremendous boon to Swords. It's purposely located this side of Main Street to activate activate Main Street better, so that the businesses between here and the pavilions itself can benefit from a new recreational centre in the town. The site to the right of the cultural centre is new housing, and there had been dilapidated semi-detached homes there, so they're now we're now moving on to construct 36 apartments on that site. Broadmeadow Way, the bridge is in, and we're continuing in that project across the S3 between Malahide and Donabate. Really exciting. The URDF project in Balbriggan Harbour, funded by government, which is really just to enliven that area. Big public realm project, which will be, I think, really to the benefit of Balbriggan town itself. Again, looking to invest in Balbriggan and make sure that we bring in economic development as well, to support the housing development that's happening in that area. And I mentioned Meekstown earlier, this similar design for the centre that's proposed for Baldoyle, and the construction is underway since last summer, due to complete this summer, so we're looking forward to that as well. I suppose, what delivers development in the county? It is the county development plan. I think I spoke to you about that last year. It's in place now up to 2029. We have lots of land zoned for housing, and I suppose those activation projects help get that housing planned and onto site. Almost 42,000 units is the capacity of the land we have zoned. Waiting to hear from government on the National Planning Framework. They are looking to increase the amount of land we are allowed to have zoned. So I'd expect some of the long-term strategic land banks will be activated more quickly than we had anticipated. But again, just waiting to see what that policy change is by government. And that should be soon. I expect by mid-year we'll have clarity on that. And if there is a change, it will require a variation to the development plan. And being Fingal and the interest in development in the county, you'll probably hear a lot about that in the press and in other places. So again, we'll move quickly when we have clarity from government on that. The activity in terms of residential development is still high in the county. A lot of projects underway, but they're big projects, so take a couple of years to complete. Still planning permission for almost 12,000 units that have not commenced. We would love to see those commence, but just to say, a lot of times permitted developments are then subject to a further planning application, because from a viability perspective, they may not work for the developer. So they look to change and make the development more viable, depending on the timing of starting, etc. So we work well with developers to bring them and advise them through planning. And again, I suppose we typically deliver about 3,000 units per year. There's been, for the last 10 years, more or less, that's what we've delivered every year. So we're one of the counties that housing still works for in terms of viability. So the activity is usually high. The aim would be about 3,000 units per year. But I think for the next number of years, it will increase on a once-off basis to deal with the pent-up demand to go up to 4. I'd say government would prefer 5, but we have to work to see how that pans out as viability is looked at. Large-scale residential development, that's the change to planning that happened after the SHD process. It's more favoured by developers. It's an application to us, the planning authority, that can be appealed to the board. But what they're finding is there's less of those permissions being judicially reviewed, which gets them to site quicker. So they prefer dealing with the local issues locally, steering it through planning here with the planning authority. And then if there's an appeal, there's an appeal. But typically those decisions hold up, and it does get the developer to site quickly. And of course, the local community are happier because they understand they could appeal. They can see how their issues are being addressed through the appeals process. And then the development gets to site. A couple of photos there of our own developments. New Road in Donabate, 112 affordable housing units launched in the last number of weeks, just to show you the scale of the interest in the county. So 112 homes. There was, the last time I checked, there was in excess of 600 applications to be considered to buy those 112 homes. So again, we can't deliver quickly enough in terms of social and affordable housing, which is why we're scaling up everything we do. Liscapa there is an example of a social housing scheme, and the quality involved there, led by our own architects designing those schemes in a way, I suppose, that meet the needs of our future tenants, but also they're sustainable. They typically require a lot less maintenance, and hopefully they'll be good homes for the next 100 years. Moving on then to the rest of our activity, again, our large scale land banks, we've just highlighted a few of them there. Hansfield, that's over in Dublin 15. That has been constructed out in about 4 years, almost completed at this stage, but a few more under construction, and that's typically the higher density units, the apartment blocks, but you'll see it transforming over there in that area. Donabate Lyhav, that was a project that delivered the distributor road in Donabate that was funded by government, but ultimately it has led to over 2,000 permitted units as we speak, 549 units under construction, in excess of 300 completed, and both the big developers are there and ourselves. So there's Fingal County Council with public lands there, there's Glenveigh Construction, and there's Cairn Homes, and we're all building at pace. We're in partnership with Glenveigh in completing the units there, delivering social, affordable and private units. Santry and Ballymun, sometimes we forget, we go to the edge of the city there, but again, a lot of construction activity there, and in excess of 1,000 units completed in Q4 2024. So again, a lot of activity. A couple of images then to show you on the next few slides. That's a development that is on public land, council-owned land. We're in partnership with GEM Construction. They're our development partner. They're delivering cost rental, social housing and affordable units. That site was greenfield in February 2024. So you can see the pace of construction. We're delighted now to have a development agreement that's attractive to the market. The bigger scale developers are engaging with us, and we're delivering units at pace. But not only homes, you'll see the linear park to the right of that slide, the road infrastructure, all of that delivered by council. And again, lots of people interested in purchasing affordable homes there. The first people moved in November, but more to move in, of course, as well. A few more images that I won't dwell on too much, but they're all council schemes, Churchfields, the road I mentioned in Churchfields, and the social housing in Donabate, already occupied, a partnership with an approved housing bodies. I'll move on to the numbers then for delivery of housing by Fingal. As I mentioned, we have 1,200 units on site. That's probably it is the biggest local authority activity in the country, comparable to the LDA and others. And you can see we're obviously planning the next schemes as well. And in terms of our line of sight, that changes all the time as we look at new land banks and also purchase new land banks. But 642 units in feasibility as well. And new projects going through planning all of the time. Our council approved 2 projects, one in Lusk and one in Swords on Monday night, in excess of 60 units approved. So again, great support from elected members in getting projects through planning and also getting to site, and the partnerships that we're operating as well. And then, of course, that all needs to translate to keys to the door every year. So the next slide just gives you an idea of the scale of our activity in terms of what we can see up to 2029. But as I mentioned, changing all of the time. Big delivery this year in terms of affordable units, nearly 500 units. But those units are very attractively priced. We do take an equity in the unit, but the market is really it was really there for us. People are very interested in living in Fingal because I think up to now it is always recognised as a good place to live. Going on then to more of your own business in terms of rates, of course, very grateful for the level of business activity in the county, and to yourselves for keeping your businesses so strong, and for all of your investment. 43% of our total income is coming from rates. That had been in excess of 50%, but some other income streams, principally to do with housing, has changed the dynamic there. So the housing income comes from our partnership with approved housing bodies, where income is paid to us in order to fund the leasing of approved housing bodies, of units to approved housing bodies. So the approved housing bodies own the units, they lease them for social housing, and then the funds flow through us from government to them. Just to mention there, with inflation since 2020, that amounts to about 20%. In that time, we haven't increased rates. We've done our best to support businesses through the difficult times of COVID and the Ukrainian crisis. I'm just going to say that inevitably, I think we're going to have to look at that in 2026. No decisions made yet, but we are facing significant pressures on our services. Our population is increasing very rapidly. I mentioned community centres and other services to do with the increasing population. All of those have to be run, and I think they're important to have a successful county, to have a quality place where people can live. And I think that's a support to business in itself. Just to mention the two government grants last year, increased cost of doing business and the Power Up grant, 11 million and almost 6 million paid out to businesses from those grants. We try to pay them as efficiently and quickly as possible, and that's what we aim to do when government make grants available to business. And then moving on to our income, I mentioned our income has increased between 2020 and 2025, almost all associated with that housing transaction to do with us and approved housing bodies. The rest has been quite not flat, but the scale of increase hasn't been the same. We deliver almost 1,000 different services across the county, and we provide a 24/7 service. With operational activity and work is really important to us. We try to maintain our area to a high standard. We work on that to, I suppose, constantly. I want to pay tribute to our own teams. I mean, they work really hard on the ground. And then when storms happen, as in terms of the recent storm, they're really quick to react and get the county back open again. So a lot of challenges with storms. They're more frequent. We're a coastal county, so obviously there's some challenges there with erosion, etc. Very, very evident in Portrane, of course. And, the work of our operations teams is key there to prepare the county for those events. And of course, our work with our climate action plan is key to try and do yield out our responsibility for climate action as well. I think it's important to mention Dublin Airport because I don't think we're ever out of the news in relation to it. Again, that's just a status report showing you that the decision on the 65 bites a night, which was subject to an application back in 2020, that decision is awaited for the board. I suppose it'd be easy enough to just say, why haven't a board Pleanála made that decision? It's been changing, I suppose. One issue that impacted that assessment was the changes to the flight paths when the runway opened. The scale of activity that's happening now wasn't predicted in the application, so that was another change. So the board did publish a draft decision. People had the opportunity to make submissions to that, and we're waiting now to see how they progress that application to final decision. The 40 million and the 36 million application, no doubt you've read about those. Again, there's two planning issues. One is transport, and the second one is noise and noise assessment. Legally, the noise assessment has to be done. There's no legal derogation on that. And I suppose from my reading of the papers in recent days, it would seem DAA have chosen and think it's best not to reply to that noise assessment till after the board decision. I personally don't see that as logical because I think the board's decision may take some time. So my advice currently in working with DAA is to get a noise assessment done quickly, and that will help steer 40 and 36 million through the planning process. In addition, I suppose ANCA have determined that one is necessary because there are noise issues in terms of the noise action plan that we've just recently completed through ANCA. So again, we need to deal with that noise issue once and for all and get it to the end of the process, and that will speed up planning. And then from a transport perspective, I mentioned local roads, which we can control ourselves. The national roads, M50, M1, M50, M1 junction, busiest in Ireland. The airport roundabout, busiest in Ireland. So a traffic assessment that shows that it works is crucial. And again, that's crucial from the perspective of progressing the applications. Further information received from DAA in March, which did address some of those issues, but still more work to be done in that space, and the Department of Transport will be the key lead on that. I suppose the support of the airport is clear from Fingal County Council. Our councillors extended the local area plan for up to 2030 at our council meeting on Monday. They're very supportive. We're looking to do the best we can to deal with the time issue. We can't buy back time, but we'd like things to move more quickly. Information and those expert studies are key to that. We're still in difficulty with the 32 million planning condition, because it's still a reality, it's still a fact. And we have a lot of complaints in about the fact that there's more passengers through the airport. So that's still under investigation. And the planning authority will report on that in due course. To more or less mundane matters then, just to mention to you, an exciting potential event in Fingal is the Open, hopefully will be coming to Portmarnock Golf Course. The decision is to investigate and support that event is coming from government. It's important from the perspective of Anglo-Irish relations, but also it's the first time it'll be held outside of the UK. Obviously it has been held in Northern Ireland and will be again this year, but what a tremendous opportunity for Fingal if we can attract that event. The timelines, obviously are pushed out a little bit. The first potential event is the Women's Open, and that'll be in or around 2028, subject to the infrastructure issues being dealt with, and then the Open in around 2030. No decision yet on the precise year, but the RNA I can tell you, they have very, very strong commitment to this. We meet them regularly. We have a project team set up in the county. Jerry McDermott, our comms officer, is the liaison person with them, and they are absolutely determined as we speak to bring this event to Ireland and to Portmarnock. That's their chosen golf course. That's where they want it to be. So we hope we can steer through some infrastructure issues, but we have all the state bodies involved with us. So it's looking good so far, but there is infrastructure to be delivered. So hopefully we can get it across the line. And then moving on to our events, just to say that we run events to activate our towns and villages. Delighted to say the Malahide concerts are happening again. The likes of Neil Young playing there this year, Justin Timberlake, Iron Maiden, and Duran Duran, I think, is another one. So again, 6 concerts in total so far, and really exciting to have those acts come into the county. But we've concerts in Swords as well. The Boomtown Rats are going to play at the end of July, and then every month the colours you see there reflect the calendar month, so you can see there's events every month. The next one, of course, next week, the St. Patrick's Day parades in almost every town in the county. So again, glad of business supports for those events. We hope they bring business to you, and at least if you live in the county, you'll get some benefit from those events, and I hope you enjoy them. That's the end of my presentation. I hope it covered everything you'd like to hear about, but from an economic perspective directly, John is going to give you the information of everything we're involved in there. So thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks very much, Anne-Marie. David, you might just give me a nod that you can hear me there.
Yeah, we can, John.
Thanks, David. So, look, you've heard a lot about the level of investment that the council is undertaking and facilitating within the county, and that obviously all impacts massively on the economic development of the county. So, just to quickly kind of go from macro and ultimately down to micro. Early last year, the council adopted an economic development strategy. It was the first one for Fingal that looks out beyond a kind of a 5 or 6 year horizon, and this looks out to 2040. It's a strategy that is going to guide future iterations of the county development plan, and it's obviously linked very strongly to our climate action plan. But beneath that high level strategic level, we've also got a range of other strategies where we're getting down into more sector specific. We have a local economic and community plan, which is a 5-year plan required of us, that is more specific and more time bound and with more immediate impact. We have a tourism strategy and a food policy. We've recently become the first local authority to have a second skills strategy. We're still the only local authority in the country to have any skills strategy, but we launched our second version of our skills strategy just last week, and that is powering ahead. We have a local enterprise development plan, which has been in place for the last 4 years, expires this year, and we're just about to kick off the process today with our strategic policy committee to initiate a new plan on that. We've got town centre and regeneration programme initiatives around the county, which I'll talk to you a bit more about. We're close to finalising the marketing strategy from an economic development point of view, and we're engaged in marketing from tourism and place making point of view from our own perspective in Fingal, but also linked to obviously being a major part of Dublin and the biggest region in the country. A new strategy that came out strongly as we were doing the economic development one is the need for sustainability in business and in SMEs in particular, and supports around that. So we're just about to start into a process of developing a strategy around that, where we'll be engaging significantly with local businesses and communities. And then the Dublin-Belfast Economic Corridor. This is something that's been in gestation for the last number of years. It's a partnership of 8 local authorities between Belfast and Dublin, including ourselves, and 2 universities at either end, with DCU and Ulster University. A strategy has been developed, and we have been bringing it along to a major event that took place in Belfast last week, where we had over 500 attendees at an economic development summit for the DBEC corridor, really, I suppose, launching it into the consciousness of both the public sector and particularly the private sector. And we had the heads of government from both North and South spoke at the event, and we had some very significant participants in a pretty much a day-long summit. I'm sure some of you managed to attend. One of the things we're doing with all of these strategies is we're emphasizing, well, we're recognizing that we as a local authority are not expert in an awful lot of this area, so we're really emphasizing the need for engagement with industry and with the likes of yourselves as members of the chamber. So we've a tourism advisory group where we've participants from the tourism sector and industry, with representational groups like the Hotels Federation, Fáilte Ireland, and visitor experience associations. On the skills implementation group, we've got industry reps, we've got representative associations, and we've got the education providers. Our role in all of this really is to put industry with other experts in the area, so that you can talk and help us to understand what the needs of yourselves as business are, and some of the other state agencies. So in terms of the skills strategy is a really good example. There's working groups there in logistics, in construction, in pharma. We're trying to develop one in hospitality at the moment, where the education providers at 3rd level are sitting down with industry to refashion the education system and how understand what are the needs of industry and how do they need to change their offering so that industry can benefit, and obviously the education system can evolve. And we're trying to do that across this whole range of strategies. So look, that's the really macro economic framework that we have. Just to remind you about this region, that we have, in terms of our key strengths, we have the third largest population in Ireland. We have the third largest youth talent pool. We have the highest economic activity rates in the country. We're number one for access for multimodal transport links with road, air, sea, and rail, both north and south. We've access to 6 ports in this corridor. We've got 3 international airports, 2 major deep sea ports, and Fingal is really well placed to access all of those. We've got the third largest SME workforce in the country for businesses with under 10 employees. We've got the second highest median annual salaries in the country. We've the number one for diversity and inclusivity. We've the second highest percentage of people in good or very good health, which is always something that really triggers interest from people. We've got we operate in terms of our rental costs here. We're 65% of the rental costs in the city centre, and we've got now more than 96 foreign invested FDI operators within this county. In terms of our principles for the strategy, and I won't go too much into this, but they're very obvious: sustainability, vibrant places, as in good, high quality places to live, providing the infrastructure, developing the skills, growing and attracting enterprises within the county, and then the international perspective, which sometimes we don't necessarily pay sufficient attention to. So Anne-Marie mentioned the development plan. Just in terms of the economic and the macroeconomic development of the county, these are the main economic development zones in the county. You can see that extract in terms of the zoning. There's 4,500 hectares of industrial zoned lands. In 2020, and I do need to update this to reflect the current development. But in 2020, as we progressed through the last development plan process, 3,000 of those were undeveloped. So there was 33% of that land had been used. So there is huge potential across all of those zones. Our priority at the moment is, you see at the very top, the Eco-Core Economic Zone. That's the Stephenstown at Balbriggan. We're at the very end stage of doing a framework plan for that, where there's an economic zone that, while some of it is already developed, it will be 350 acres of economic lands available in a town, and in a town where there is residential zoning for up to 4,500 new units to be developed in a planned way over the next 10, 15 or 20 years. This is a big priority for us. We're at the end stage where we're just dealing with transport issues with TII and NTA at the moment, but we expect that to come to the elected members and be adopted and then be launched as probably the most significant industrial park development in Dublin in many, many years. I won't go location by location, but you can see the huge potential when you match it against the available lands. From my own team and our perspective, what we're aiming to do in terms of economic development is to provide a kind of a one-stop shop for business supports. Within my area, we have economic, enterprise, tourism, and cultural development. The economic development unit, we're aiming to make establishing and developing your business as easy an experience as possible. The advantage we have in that is that we're separate from the planning department and the infrastructure department. When they get into their statutory processes, they tend to be limited in the kinds of interactions that they can have, whereas we're much freer to have maybe a more informal and relaxed relationship with people. We provide property solutions in that we own the council lands, and we have relationships with all of the owners of all of those industrial zones and parks that are within the county. We try to facilitate that supportive ecosystem across all of that range of strategies and sub-strategies that I highlighted earlier on, connecting into skills and training supports, providing incentives, and again, that one-stop shop idea where if you come to my economic development unit and my team in that department, they will signpost you to whatever supports there are out there and try to help you address any of the challenges that you're facing. I've just put up their email there, econdev@fingal.ie. Please reach out to them. They're waiting to assist any businesses that need support. The next piece is part of my brief is town regeneration. So we're not just looking at the macro and the big economic zones. We're looking at the high street and the main streets and the towns and villages. I've circled there where we're currently active in terms of bringing health checks or town centre first development plans or interaction with communities and businesses to try to rejuvenate and enliven main streets. We're dealing with vacant properties and dereliction, and those red dots are the derelict sites where there's existing action being pursued. There's over 170 of those, and that's where there are still areas of the county where we started blitzing early, probably mid last year or early last year, and we're not through the full county yet. So those red dots, by the time we come back to you the next time, there will be significantly more red dots in other parts of the county. And of course, some of those will have dropped off because the dereliction will have been removed. But those circles, you can see small villages like Ballybohol, Knoll, Balrotherry, and then the large towns like Balbriggan, Skerries, Rush and Lusk, where we're going out, engaging with the local community to develop what are known as town teams under the town centre first approach to rejuvenation. And crucially, under each of those town teams, we're trying to get business associations up and running within those towns and villages. So, we'd be looking for you, if you get the opportunity to participate in these things, that we would really appreciate it if you'd engage with it. The purpose of this is, like I said, to rejuvenate those main streets and town centre areas. And while I've circled where we are at the moment, we will be moving to those other parts of the county now over the course of the next 12 to 18 months to get those kinds of initiatives up and running in those other parts. I mentioned the support environment. And just to kind of move from the macro to the micro, I mean, we have relationships with all of those entities encircled there with Enterprise Ireland, the IDA, the universities, and the various different agencies that are and representative groups that are in the county. We work extremely well with your own chamber and all of those other entities there. And we, of course, we provide 3 enterprise centres. They've recently been consolidated into a single operation known as Innovate Fingal, because we now need to move that enterprise support and provision onto a more significant county-wide kind of operating base. Things have changed significantly since those enterprise centres were built, and they were set up as individual separate entities, but the nature of enterprise support has massively changed over those 20-odd years. And they're now working together to provide supports, not just within their enterprise centres, but looking beyond the walls of those centres to provide support out to those people who maybe don't need the space in an enterprise centre, but really need to support the kind of supports that enterprise centres offer. So to get down to the really micro then, the local enterprise office, again, is part of my brief here. The significance of the supports that are offered by the local enterprise centres is it's difficult to even comprehend. And when we go to the events where we get to interact with some of the clients of those local enterprise centres, the appreciation for the support, whether it's the soft supports or the financial grant supports and aids that they get, it's really tangible, and it seems to be really appreciated and is certainly really impactful. So just to quickly run through those, like I said, they offer soft support services like mentoring and business advisory services. There are financial supports. where there is direct grant aid available. There are a significant amount of training events offered through the Leo. And then there is the promotion of the enterprise culture through a huge array of events and networking opportunities that are provided. So I'll just quickly run through some of those. In terms of mentoring and business advisory services, there's business advice clinics where one-to-one guidance is offered to individual, whether they're startups or small businesses. There has been a change recently in terms of the operation of the Leo, where they used to be limited to businesses with up to 10 employees. That has now increased to up to 50. Again, looking for any opportunity that they can get to provide the kind of business advice that any of those businesses need. Business mentoring is available. We have a panel of 60 specialist advisors available with specialisms across the huge range from the kind of corporate advices like HR and finance and all of those, and down into sector specific, very experienced mentors who are out there and available to provide the kind of support and advice that businesses benefit so much from. We are Start Your Own Business program, a 10-module program that can be run over 5 or 10 weeks, depending on the needs of the participants. And it's a really successful program that people benefit a lot from. And then we have management development training for existing business owners and managers who maybe want to move from the technical side of the business and into the more kind of management and corporate side. And, you know, they can benefit from this kind of training to transition out into working in the business to working on the business. Microfinance Ireland is, I suppose, what the Leo offers here is it's an agency that supports micro enterprises with small business loans ranging from 2 to 50,000. It's for startups and businesses that have difficulty in accessing finance from the more kind of conservative lending providers. Risk is part of the deal here, and they are out there and available and willing to invest in startup businesses where the more traditional lending providers might not be. They have a standard interest rate of 6.5%, but if you come through the Leo, you can get a more beneficial rate of 5.5%, and that's something that people probably aren't generally aware of. In terms of the financial supports that we give directly, there is a feasibility study of up to 15,000, business priming and expansion grants of up to 80,000. There's a market explorer grant of 10,000, energy efficiency of 10, grow digital of 5, innovation and R&D funding, and then the Microfinance Ireland package of 50,000. No business is limited to one of these. Many businesses apply through multiple of these channels, and there are businesses who have benefited to the tune of in excess of 100,000 when they engage directly with the union, with the Leo, and work through the processes of building up and coming in incrementally through this grant system. It is hugely beneficial, and in excess of €1 million has been given out in these kinds of grants in both of the last 2 years, 2023 and 2024. So just in terms of fostering that enterprise culture and the kind of events that are and training opportunities that are scheduled, this is just a sample of the next few weeks of the things that are happening. So there's a business acceleration program, there's Canva for beginners and advanced, there's Start Your Own Business, Tech to Exec, management development, service expansions, leadership development programs, and management development programs, all planned in the next few weeks. We just last week had Enterprise Week, where there was about 20 different events organized across the county, and we got huge engagement at every single event. There is a business support and advice clinic that's held once a month, and at the moment we're getting in excess of 100 participants in those every single month. The word is getting out about the kind of support that's available from Leo, and people are really taking to it. And I would encourage any of you out there, go onto the Leo's website, get in touch with them, find out, are you eligible for support, and try to avail of those supports. And these are the kind of opportunities, the networking opportunities with these things, with these events. is huge. And the routine, get yourself onto the mailing lists, get yourself into the notification, and get into these networking events, because the opportunities that arise from those and the businesses that even are generated from them are just immense. We've got National Enterprise Awards. We had a recent enterprise, and we've had success at national level from Fingal winners in the past. So we would encourage any businesses to come through the Leo, get into those awards, and raise your profile and the profile of your business. We've also got then sector-specific kind of initiatives where we have networks with food networks and craft networks. Again, all linking back to that strategic framework that I mentioned earlier on, where we have engagement processes and groups coming together under all of those different strategies. So I think that's the end from me. I hope that was useful to everybody. Again, the economic econ dev at fingal.ie, town regeneration at fingal.ie, and the local enterprise office here in Fingal County Council for access to any of those and to participate in any of those initiatives. So thanks very much.
Thank you, John. It was very interesting, and thanks to Anne-Marie as well for a very kind of engaged presentation. I'm going to hand over now to David. David's going to just manage a Q&A session, and if any of the questions coming through, I think we have a couple of questions have come through on chat.
Yeah, thanks so much, Anne-Marie and John. If anyone does have any questions you'd like to add, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom in your toolbar in Zoom there, and we'll do our best to get to them. Coming back to Anne-Marie, I know you had a slide on it there. One of the key areas that's been mentioned in the media in particular in recent years is around the airport. Could you maybe go in a little bit further detail on the delays that we've seen there in relation to planning and that, and what's projected in terms of a timeline over the next number of years there, as to when we might be likely, if all things go well, to see expansions to the cap being granted, and how that might be working going forward?
Yeah, thanks, David, and thanks to John for the really good presentation there too. Listen, we work very hard at the airport, with the senior managers at the airport in relation to dealing with some of the obstacles for making progress. Fingal itself had steered through the terminals and the runway through planning successfully, dealt with judicial reviews and all the rest to make sure that permission for the runway particularly stood and allowed construction of the runway a couple of years ago. I suppose it's hard to see past adequate planning applications, so we've had some difficulty with that in terms of needing to request further information. The noise issue has to be tackled in terms of the legislation. So Schiphol Airport, for example, last week, the decision from the EU Commission in relation to that airport was noise assessment and the balanced approach is a non-negotiable, has to be done. So the EU Commission seemed to be taking that view and very clearly articulating it. So I think there's an element of delay that's purely caused by doing the due diligence that's needed. And any of the businesses that are watching will understand that, particularly the bigger businesses, where you just have to address head on the assessments that you need to do, get them done to a high standard, and work with the planning process. Pre-planning is absolutely crucial, and that's not about me meeting the management team or them meeting my management team, which we do regularly. It's about the experts getting into a room and going through the detail of assessment that's needed and working through working through the exact nature of what needs to be done and then getting it done. So again, 36 million, I think, suffered from that. There was no pre-planning, basically just dealing with it head on, because planning does work and works successfully. Our economic development of the county is thriving because of planning permissions and new businesses location here. So we're going to continue to work. The key thing is making progress from my perspective. So we'll get there in the end, but every day when you have a really difficult problem needs to be used for making progress. So look forward to, I suppose, further engagement with DAA and making sure that we do everything we can to help the issue. And again, that expert advice, good advisors here, good planners, environmentalists, transport engineers, they're all available to support the process. So we work through and continue to work diligently to get there. Work done, but more to do in that space is what I'd say, David.
Thanks so much for that. And moving on to another area of infrastructure, is there any update from the council side of things in relation to the Metrolink project?
Yeah, disappointed to read today that Michael McDowell in the Irish Times looking to stop it again. Metrolink is in the final stage of the onboard Planolis assessment. So I'm on the board of TII as it happens, and we will be expecting a decision towards the end of this year. The staff are in place. There's a new project director who is located to Ireland from New Zealand because of his experience in delivering metros. So he's phenomenal. Well worth the chamber looking to meet with him. His lifeblood is delivering transport systems. He knows exactly what needs to be done. So it's energizing to listen to him. I think there's good, strong government support. I'm optimistic that with planning, successful planning by year end, the project can finally get moving. And I understand it'll definitely, all things being equal, get to site in the coming years. And after that, my ambition is get it to site. And then once there's progress being made every day, as I mentioned with a previous issue, that's a good thing, isn't it? So it'll be transformative to Swords. And I know the director of Metro is really, really looking at Fingal and the opportunity here. And it's also the easiest piece for construction. So I'd really hope the airport and Fingal will benefit from it really as quick as possible. But I don't think the government would have supported the employment of that director unless they had strong intent to deliver the project.
Great, thanks for that. Housing is something that's repeatedly come up in recent business sentiment surveys that the Chamber have carried out. I know you addressed it extensively there in the presentation. But one of the areas, I suppose, that we've seen lots of changes in the last few years around targets have been are waiting to be amended, I suppose, as you mentioned. But there's been a lot of initiatives that have kind of been maybe viewed as short term by some people in commentary on it. Has that affected how some of the numbers are kind of, the commencements and to completions are kind of maybe skewed a little bit over the last few years? I'm particularly thinking of where there's exemptions given to charges for commencements, and is you finding trouble in having some of those? I think it was 66% are anticipated as being completed. So is there kind of a bit of a gap emerged there that possibly there wasn't before because of some short-term changes?
Yeah, well, a couple of issues. I suppose the higher density schemes, there does seem to be viability issues with those apartment schemes. Initially, they were funded by private investment funds, and more recently, it's really been government funds largely and approved housing bodies borrowing to fund part of the cost that has got those projects to site. I work at a national level as well, just in terms of making sure there's an understanding at the national level what's happening on the ground. Two things I'd say: the cost of apartment construction needs to come down. So everything needs to be looked at, and modern methods of construction is one aspect of that. But they're trying to, I suppose, evolve that. And I know some of the larger developers are saying they've arrived at a model that can deliver apartments a little bit cheaper, around the €400,000 mark, but not viable enough, I suppose, to get to site. So I think private investments are absolutely required to activate that market. They're not the only solution, but it has to be a combination of private and public funds that gets those apartments built. Government did look at sustainability guidelines, which allowed, innovative ways of looking at density. So it isn't always about 6-7-story apartments. You can achieve medium to high densities with the likes of duplexes and 4-story apartments, which are more viable. And Fingal has benefited from that. That's what has caused the increase in activity in the county. But listen, if it were easy, it would have been resolved by now. But I think it's the key priority for government. They've already announced that. And again, we've met with Minister Chambers and others on the issue. So we'll play our part. And I think the availability of land, public transport, east and west in the county in terms of rail, bus connects, servicing a lot more of our areas. So all of that will help. But investment just needs to continue, and we need to try every form of modernisation to get the units delivered.
Is Fingal, I suppose, carrying the can a little bit for the Dublin region in terms of delivering housing when it comes to, South Dublin area is kind of hemmed in by the mountains. We have developed into, Kildare and those other counties on the western side. So it's Fingal's kind of, I suppose, seen as the area that has the land, has the space to develop into in the greater Dublin region. Do you see it that over the coming years there's going to be more of a leaning on this county to deliver housing for the greater Dublin region as we see, demographics going up, populations moving towards cities near them. By 2030, or despite all the great work that you're doing and meeting targets, are we still going to be looking at a wide gap?
Yeah, well, I think Fingal will play its part, and probably a key part, if we can deliver transport orientated development. So the likes of Donabate, for example, when DART is delivered to Donabate, will have that high capacity development, and that's one of the reasons why there's significant development underway there at the moment. But if Metro comes to Swords, and Metro or bus connects as well, Swords can play a really strong part in delivery for Dublin. And similarly on the west, Hansfield, for example, I mentioned the figures for that development area earlier, but Hansfield over in Dublin 15 train station constructed for the purpose of the development of that land. So compact growth and transport orientated development, definitely strong planning policies, as well as brownfield sites in Dublin City. But we can play a strong part in delivering for Dublin. And I think particularly around that home ownership, starter home piece, that's our tradition, and I think we'll continue to do that.
Great. And what would be your kind of final key takeaway points for people to leave here with today?
I think the key point is we value businesses in our county. We appreciate the level of effort you put in to keep Fingal a strong economic environment. So we would like to support you where we can. I hope you enjoy John's presentation, which is our perspective in terms of rolling out supports. But again, we're always open to new things. And then separately, we work hard to deliver housing and quality of place. And again, we hope you feel we use the rates that you pay us, and we're grateful for, very well, and we want to continue that, as well as being an efficient, modern organisation that can achieve that. So we have worked hard on the organisation itself to make it efficient and effective, and also to have the most modern techniques in terms of our work and our design of projects and our implementation of our capital programme. So always here to listen and answer any questions, and never hesitate to email me.
Great.
I know John has given the same invitation.
Great. Thanks so much to Anne-Marie and to John as well for your presentations and for fielding the questions that we've had going. Thanks so much to Pat as well for participating in this morning's webinar. And we will look forward to engaging.
I'll thank you, David, Pat and Andrew, for your support to us. The Chamber is significant in the county Fingal environment, and we really appreciate everything you do.
Great. And just lastly to mention to people that are watching this is that we are opening up our latest Fingal Business Sentiment Survey that we sent out to your inboxes. We'd really appreciate your feedback on that. It covers a range of things like your challenges and concerns for Fingal, as well as what skills gaps you might have, and your views on the likes of the airport, on artificial intelligence, and all these different areas that will be able to help inform the local councillors, TDs, ministers, and other stakeholders, and let them know what businesses are concerned about and where the requirements might be for them going forward. So really valuable to have that feedback. So really appreciate it took 4 or 5 minutes of your time to give your feedback and your input in that. Would be really really appreciated. So thanks very much to everyone for participating in today's event, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.